Hong Hei Fat Choi, you are watching HKIBC's first main news in the Year of the Tiger. I'm Sarah Wong. Our top stories tonight. Untraceable Covid cases rise to 22, the highest since Hong Kong was hit by the fifth wave. 5 babies are born on the stroke of midnight as Hong Kong ushers in the Year of the Tiger. And 10 Downing Street comes under fire over excessive drinking culture and leadership failure. Hong Kong has recorded the biggest number of COVID infections in 5 days, with 129 new patients, 102 of whom have no travel history. The total included 22 unlinked cases, the most since the fifth wave began. Raymond Yang reports.
If you think the fifth COVID wave is about to pass, put that thought behind for now. The Center for Health Protection reported 129 infections over the past 24 hours, the most in 5 days. Of those cases, 102 were local. Even more alarming was the 22 untraceable local infections, the most since the fifth wave arrived last month.
Unlinked cases indicate that there are a lot of other cases in the community that are unknown to us at the moment, so that we cannot find the linkage between the cases with those that have been detected so far. Of course, with more cases more people going testing and more history, we may find some cases to be linked to other cases subsequently.
Of 22 unlinked patients, 2 carried the Delta strain. 1 lives in Tai Wo Estate in Tai Po and works in Lam Tin. The other resides at Yau Tong Estate and works in Chai Wan. The center would not reveal their professions. The other cases were Omicron and were spread across the city, including Sai Ying Pun, To Kwa Wan, Yuen Long, Tuen Mun, and Tai Po. 2 airport workers who distributed sample bottles to incoming passengers were found to carry strains which matched that of arrivals from Nepal on January 25th. Chuang said the pair were infected despite donning protective clothing. The hospital authority said 1,103 patients remain under treatment or are in stable condition. Raymond Yang, HKIBC.
A 45-year-old woman is the latest untraceable local COVID case in neighboring Shenzhen. Starting tomorrow, people will need a negative test result within 48 hours to leave the city. Strict traffic controls were imposed, with large gatherings banned in Bao'an and Longgang districts. One of the woman's close contacts was found infected in neighboring Huizhou, prompting fears of cross-city transmissions. The Mainland reported 27 local cases yesterday. 13 were in Hangzhou, but the authorities said the risk of a community outbreak has been contained. Locally, 5 tiger babies arrived at a stroke of midnight, just in time for a family reunion with their parents. Other people chose to ring in the new year by visiting temples or even setting off fireworks. Raymond Yang tells us more.
For the second year in a row, the midnight ceremony at Wong Tai Sin Temple was closed to the public due to COVID. Instead, the ritual was broadcast online for worshippers to watch from the comfort of their homes. On behalf of Hong Kongers, Temple Abbot Li Yufai offered his prayers to the Taoist deity, the great immortal Wong. While the popular temple will only reopen on Friday, some worshippers insisted on paying a visit last night, saying they wanted to stick with the tradition. Most wished for good health and a quick end to the epidemic. Che Kung Temple in Sha Tin chose to stay open during the holidays. The temple, dedicated to the god of protection, is popular among people who want a change of fortune. One way to speed up the arrival of good fortune is by spinning on this colorful wheel, which can be bought in shops. The first day of the Year of the Tiger saw the arrival of 5 newborns. They were born on the stroke of midnight and included this baby girl at Union Hospital in Sha Tin. Her parents revealed she arrived 10 days early. This dad, meanwhile, was all smiles after embracing his first child at Adventist Hospital in Chun Wan. He said they plan on giving her a name which brings happiness. While celebrations were necessary, some took things a little too far and broke the law. Many fireworks displays were sighted in various districts early this morning, including Yau Ma Tei, Qingyi, and Kwai Chung Estate, the epicenter of the current COVID outbreak. Police arrested one man in Chun Wan for possessing 2 sets of firecrackers. Ray Min-yang, HKIBC.
Overseas, Myanmar came to a virtual standstill today as people marked a so-called silent strike on the first anniversary of a military coup. Streets in Yangon, the biggest city, were empty, following calls for businesses and shops to shut and people to stay home. Although the military rulers threatened to jail those who complied, similar scenes were reported in other towns and cities across Myanmar. Early this morning, activists demonstrated in Yangon to demand the return of democracy. Security forces have killed at least 1,500 anti-coup protesters and arrested thousands in the past year, according to a human rights group. A senior civil servant has castigated the failure of leadership and excessive drinking culture in 10 Downing Street at a time when Britain was in the grips of COVID. Prime Minister Boris Johnson promised to overhaul the way his office is run, but calls for his resignation have mounted.
I want to say sorry.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is fighting for his political survival after an independent investigation lambasted failures of leadership and judgment on his watch. Senior civil servant Sue Gray criticized the excessive drinking culture in 10 Downing Street after examining 16 events where COVID rule breaches were suspected. But the abridged 12-page report didn't mention any names or assign blame because London police have launched their own investigation.
I get it, and I will fix it. And I want to say, I know what the issue is. Yes, Mr. Speaker, yes. It's whether this government can be trusted to deliver. And I say, Mr. Speaker, yes, we can be trusted. Yes, we can be trusted to deliver.
Johnson promised an overhaul of the day-to-day conduct of his office, but that did not satisfy some in his ruling Conservative Party or his political rivals.
By routinely breaking the rules he set, the Prime Minister took us all for fools. He held people sacrificing contempt. He showed himself unfit for office.
Either my right honourable friend had not read the rules, or didn't understand what they meant, and others around him, or they didn't think the rules applied to number 10. Which was it?
Loyalists stood by Johnson, who insisted he has no intention to resign.
I think you saw MPs overwhelmingly back the Prime Minister, and I think that reflects, in my sense, of the balance and the overwhelming balance of opinion in the party.
Gray's report will be updated when police finish their inquiries. Johnson could be facing political demise or even criminal consequences should he be found to be at fault. Britons who lost loved ones during the stringent COVID lockdowns were critical of the Gray report.
This redacted version of this report is just another really terrible, really awful day for all COVID bereaved families. You know, it repeats and says, even in its redacted version, it repeats and says what we already knew, that the Prime Minister and a lot of his colleagues broke laws which they created and they set regularly and blatantly. They knew exactly what they were doing. And while millions of people were rising to the challenge of making, quite incredible and enormous sacrifices to protect their loved ones and to protect the rest of society, Downing Street and our Prime Minister failed, and they continued to lie.
Some analysts believe the abridged report is not enough to rally 54 Conservative MPs to call for a vote of no confidence in Johnson. But pollsters said his popularity had already started slipping prior to the scandals because of rising discontent with the economy and immigration. Russia and the United States have crossed swords in the United Nations Security Council, with Moscow accusing Washington of trying to inflame the situation over Ukraine. The West claims that a Russian military buildup on Ukraine's border is a prelude to an invasion, an allegation that Moscow has persistently rejected.
Colleagues, the situation we're facing in Europe is urgent and dangerous, and the stakes for Ukraine and for every UN member state could not be higher. Russia's actions strike at the very heart of the UN Charter. If Russia further invades Ukraine, none of us will be able to say we didn't see it coming, and the consequences will be horrific.
Russian Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia hit back, saying the West was being provocative by talking about a threat of war. He said it appears that the United States actually wants a conflict to break out. As Nebenzia spoke, Ukrainian soldiers trained, many using weapons supplied by the U.S. and its NATO allies. Russia says its military exercises are defensive because of the presence of NATO missiles and forces on its doorstep. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has condemned protests that gripped the capital, Ottawa, as truckers try to force the government to reverse a vaccine mandate decision.
Over the past few days, Canadians were shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital. I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults and abuse at small business workers and steal food from the homeless. There is no place in our country for threats, violence, or hatred. So to those responsible for this behavior, it needs to stop.
Trudeau then denounced opposition politicians for fanning the flames after Conservative leader Erin O'Toole said the protesters' concerns are worth listening to. Triple-jabbed Trudeau also announced that he tested positive for COVID and is self-isolating but has no symptoms. The number of cases in Canada, where around 80% of the population are fully vaccinated, is falling after peaking earlier this month. Back in Hong Kong, an elderly man was killed while trying to save his drowning stepdaughter on a remote island this afternoon. Paramedics performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation on the 71-year-old, while the 22-year-old woman was conscious as they were rushed to hospital. It's believed that a woman lost her footing and fell into the water when they were hiking on Tung Lung Chau. Her stepfather jumped in trying to rescue her, but drowned. Millions of people on the mainland welcomed the Year of the Tiger in high spirits. As dawn broke, the People's Liberation Army heralded the new year with a flag-raising ceremony in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. Celebrations were held across the country. In Guangxi province, the Zhang ethnic minority performed a traditional dance as they prayed for a good harvest. The joyous atmosphere reached outer space, with 3 astronauts sending their greetings from the Tiangong space station. Onto the weather now. Tomorrow will continue to be cloudy with a few rain patches. Temperatures range between 13 and 16 degrees. Brace for more cold days ahead. And don't forget your umbrella when you go out. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for the first day of the Lunar New Year. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Sarah Wong. Thanks for joining us and take care.